Welcome to Patscast. I'm Brad Whitaker. I have a plan to get the New England Patriots back into Super Bowl contention as quickly as humanly possible. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying this is not necessarily what I exactly want the Patriots to do. I made a video last week saying, look, I think the Pats should take Marvin Harrison Jr. at third overall, get that once-in-a-generation wide receiver who is as close to a sure thing as you're going to get. Figure out a way to draft J.J. McCarthy, develop him, bring in a veteran for a year or two, and then go from there. But I don't think the Patriots are going to do that. So this is a far more realistic plan on what I think the Patriots are more likely to do and what they can do. So I'm going to break down who they should bring back, who is already on the roster this past season, who they should take in free agency. And I really don't have a long list there, but they are massive signings, and I'll get to that in just a moment, and who they should take at least in the first 4 rounds of the 2024 NFL Draft. I'm not going to go through rounds 5 through 7, but I am going to go through the first 4 rounds who I think can really jumpstart this offense the way they need to. Now, as of this recording, the Patriots have about $69 million roughly in cap space, but the number is going to be much larger than that, right? There's no way in hell they're going to bring back J.C. Jackson for the 8-figure annual salary that he currently has. He's not worth that. No other team is going to pay him that. They're not going to trade him. They're going to cut him. That doesn't mean Jackson won't be back. Jackson knows he's not worth that amount, but you can get a lot more out of him in New England than you can anywhere else. So maybe they cut him and bring him back for a lot less. But I think that's pretty much a guarantee. J.C. Jackson is not going to be getting that money that he signed for with the LA Chargers before they traded him back to New England. So once that happens, we're looking at a little bit north of $80 million in cap space. Now, there's more that they could do. I'm not necessarily saying the Patriots should do this, but if you cut guys like Adrian Phillips and Lawrence Guy, then you're looking at a little bit south of $100 million in cap space. So there's a lot of room there to use in free agency and to extend some of the guys that we know actually work here in New England. I'm not saying they should do that, particularly Lawrence Guy, and I also really like Adrian Phillips, but at the very least, let's go under the assumption that they're going to have around $80 million in cap space after cutting J.C. Jackson. So let's get to the Patriots players that I think you have to bring back. And the number one priority heading into the offseason has to be Michael Onwenu, all right? You guys got a great right guard / right tackle. Belichick hesitated to kick him over to the tackle position a little bit too late last season, probably because he thought he would be back this year and didn't want to pay Onwenu being a tackle instead of a guard. But you got to bring the guy back, right? All right, he thrives here in New England. You can probably get him from somewhere between 14 to 18 million a season. Just do it, extend it. Then you at least know if you're still dealing with issues at tackle, then you have Michael Onwenu who can be kicked out to right tackle. Or if you reinforce the tackle positions this offseason, which I'm going to suggest in a moment, then you can kick him back to right guard, and then you got a pretty damn good offensive line for the next good quarterback coming in. Second priority, I think you got to bring back Kendrick Bourne. Kendrick Bourne works in New England. He worked great Mac Jones' rookie year. He worked great, was on pace for a career season before he got hurt mid-season. We know it didn't really work out in year 2 with Matt Patricia and Joe Judge, but the locker room loves the guy. He's a great piece to have there on the roster. He's going to be a great number 3 or number 4 wide receiver if you do this offseason right. And I think you can get him back at value considering he's coming back from an injury. Again, Kendrick Bourne wants to come back. He certainly expressed that. He thinks he's going to come back. So you get that done. You get Onwenu back. You get Kendrick Bourne back. And then you at least have some pieces to work with on the offense. Then I say you franchise tag Hunter Henry. You don't franchise tag Michael Onwenu because offensive linemen are all tagged at the same amount, whether you play guard, whether you play tackle. Onwenu's on the fence. So I don't think you do it with him. You certainly don't do it with Kendrick Bourne. I think you do it with a tight end because tight ends, once you get past, Travis Kelce and Andrews and Kittle, it really kind of drops off a table on highly paid elite NFL tight ends. There just aren't that many. So it is a lot cheaper to franchise tag tight ends than any other position that is a skill position. So Hunter Henry's really worked well in New England. I'd say you bring him back under the franchise tag. And maybe you also consider bringing back Mike Gesicki and Pharaoh Brown just because they're fairly cheap and you can get a lot of production out of them. Farrell Brown was a pleasant surprise this past season. He can block, he can do whatever you ask of him, and I think you're going to get a lot more out of him in a second year in New England. And Gesicki is kind of a red zone, large wide receiver type tight end. Very inexpensive to bring him back. I say you address the tight end position maybe next season, and you just take care and bring those three guys back, because that was one of the few strengths the Patriots did have on offense this past season. So you franchise tag Hunter Henry and you bring back Mike Gesicki and Farrell Brown, who's not going to be that expensive. And then you don't really have to worry about the tight end position. I know a lot of people think the Patriots should draft the tight end, maybe trade back and take one in the first round. This is a tight end deep draft, but there's a lot more immediate needs, and you can bring back these guys who are working. So I think that's important as well. And then on the defensive side, I'm not the biggest Kyle Duggar fan. I like Kyle Duggar. I think he's very athletic, but I've expressed that I think you can survive without him. That being said, when it comes between him and Josh Uche, who are the two really elite defensive players they could potentially lose to free agency, I think you got to bring back Kyle Duggar between those guys. He seems like a career Patriot guy. He does. He's very athletic. And yeah, I think he's going to give up big plays out every now and then. He certainly has, but he's also going to make a lot more big plays than the ones that he gives up. You bring back Kyle Duggar, you sign him long term, and then you don't have to worry about it, right? But I also say you have to let Josh Uche walk. Not that I don't like Josh Uche, and maybe Gerard Mayo and Marcus Covington would do a lot more with him than Bill Belichick has, which has essentially been limiting him to third down. But just because you don't play him as much as he probably should, I think another team is going to spend a lot more on Josh Uche than the New England Patriots would. So I say you let Uche walk and you bring back Kyle Duggar. So really, the four main pieces I think you have to bring back there: Michael Onwenu, Kendrick Bourne, franchise tag Hunter Henry, Kyle Duggar, and then you bring back Gesicki and Brown so you can kind of fill out the depth at the tight end position, because that actually sort of did work this past season, unlike the wide receiver position. So now let's get to free agency. Breaking news today: Mike Evans will be entering free agency. He's not even anywhere near close to signing a deal with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, there are some red flags with Mike Evans for the fact that he's 30 years old, and I think he's going to be demanding more of a longer-term contract for a guy at that age. I think a lot of teams are going to throw money at Mike Evans for maybe 2 to 3 seasons. If you're the Patriots, I think you can sign him to a 4 to 5 year deal and maybe even spend a little bit less annually, but give him that insurance that he's going to be there long term. He's going to have an NFL contract till at least age 34, 35. I think that's going to be very enticing to him. You have Robert Kraft call Tom Brady. Brady gets Mike Evans on the phone. Hey, you should come to New England. I think you will really thrive there. You'll certainly be the number one guy. I think he would like to play in Foxborough. I know Florida is a little bit different than New England, but I think if the Patriots can give him a longer term deal than what some of the other teams in the league will offer, they can probably pay a little less annually and give him the insurance that he has an NFL contract. And then you get a guy who, at least the first 2 or 3 seasons, is guaranteed, as long as he's on the field, and he's usually on the field, is going to give you 1,000 yards. He's going to give you that number one wide receiver the Patriots really haven't had since Randy Moss. I say you throw the bag at Mike Evans, you sign him as long as you possibly can, and then you don't have to worry about it, right? And look, if it doesn't work out with Evans, there's still T. Higgins, there's still Michael Pittman Jr., there's still Calvin Ridley. Some of these guys may end up re-signing with their teams, but it sounds like Calvin Ridley probably will be a free agent. T. Higgins, the Bengals have a lot wrapped up in cap space. They may not be able to afford to bring him back. But of those 4 guys, I think Mike Evans is the one you need to prioritize, because he's a sure thing 1,000-yard receiver. Going to give you 60, 70, 80 catches at the very least. And these aren't dink and dunk catches. These are explosive plays, which the Patriots certainly have lacked. I would love to see Mike Evans in a Patriots uniform for 4 to 5 seasons and just let him finish his career in New England if he wants to. Give him that insurance that he can be an NFL player with a decent contract and entice him to come to Foxborough. Get Brady on the phone with him and make it happen. I think that's very important. And then I think you should spend money on another tackle. I think you got to go after Tyron Smith of the Dallas Cowboys. Now, he's a little bit up there in age as well. I'm not sure you're getting him for more than a season or two, but that's really what you need. You need a bridge tackle there. Doesn't mean he's not going to re-sign with Dallas. I think he probably will, but you can probably get him for a little bit cheaper, maybe north of 10 million. Maybe you throw a little bit more at him to guarantee he'll come here, 12 to 14 million, and you sign him for a 2-year deal. And you got that bridge tackle there. You got a Wenu. You got Tyron Smith. Let's not mess around with the offensive line, all right? We got some cap space. We have some money to spend. Give him an offer he can't refuse. Bring in a veteran like Tyron Smith and make sure the next quarterback has the protection that Mac Jones has not had the last 3 seasons. Now, if you don't think you can get Tyron Smith, you can't bring him in. As much as I hate to say it, you got to at least consider Trent Brown. I think he's a bit of a cancer in the locker room, but he really does like Gerard Mayo. He's happy Mayo's there. Didn't have a great relationship with Bill Belichick, was essentially sent to the bench. But Patriots are going to get more out of Trent Brown than any of the other 31 NFL teams. So you might be able to get him back for a little bit cheaper. Again, I would prioritize Tyron Smith. But if you can't, maybe you can get a little bit something out of Trent Brown, a little bit more, which an engaged Trent Brown is still one of the best tackles in the NFL, and maybe he'll be a bit more engaged under the Gerard Mayo regime. So if you can't get Tyron Smith, you got to, at the very least, as much as I hate to say it, consider Trent Brown. Okay, so far on offense, we have Mike Onwenu and Tyron Smith and or Trent Brown reinforcing the tackle positions on that offensive line. So then you have Cole Strange, City So maybe developing a little bit more. He looked a lot better at the end of the season at right guard. Hopefully David Andrews is back at the center position. You have the other Andrews guy as well if he does retire, but I think David Andrews will be back. That's a pretty damn good old line. And then you have Mike Evans, Kendrick Bourne, Demario Douglas, Hunter Henry, real weapons at that receiving core. Bring back Mike Gesicki and Farrell Brown, who can play kind of spot roles. And now you got a decent offense, right? And you can address a little bit more going into the draft, but you feel comfortable about that team heading into draft day. And then also you re-sign Kyle Duggar to make sure that defense doesn't lose a beat heading in to Gerard Mayo's first season. I think the defense is going to be just fine. I think they're going to be top 5 in the NFL, but I think you got to bring Duggar back in order for that to happen. So now let's head to the NFL draft. First pick for the Patriots, number 3 overall. My preference is Drake May. Between Drake May and Jaden Daniels because of the size, right? I think you're going to get a Josh Allen type player from Drake May. You're going to be able to do a lot with him. He's going to be mobile, but he's not going to be overly dependent on his legs. You're going to be able to run quarterback sneaks or the tush push or all of those things. He's going to be able to hurdle players running downfield and get first downs when the play breaks down. And he's got incredible arm talent, probably the best in the draft, can throw off platform. Really, really like Drake May. I think I'm kind of going back and forth on it, but right now, if Drake May is available, he's the guy I'm taking at number 3 overall, assuming the Patriots do want to take a quarterback. That being said, if it is Jaden Daniels and Drake May is not available, I'm not going to be upset about it. I really like Jaden Daniels. My real issue with him isn't so much his height. He has 2 inches on Lamar Jackson, looks just as fast as Lamar Jackson out there. But he is a little bit skinny, and I think one of the issues with Jaden Daniels, he's got the arm strength, he's got the accuracy. I think going through the progression and going through that NFL learning curve is going to be a bit more challenging for him than Drake May, but he can certainly do it, right? And my issue with him, though, is he kind of abandons plays a little bit early. He doesn't slide as much as he should. I think with his frame, if he doesn't put on the amount of weight and muscle that he should this offseason, he's going to run into a 300-pound linebacker, and that's going to be it. You're going to lose Jaden Daniels for the rest of the season. That being said, if it's Jaden Daniels is the quarterback and it's not Drake May, that's going to be a lot more exciting, right? He's going to be a lot more fun to watch in New England. Certainly going to sell a lot of jerseys. We're all going to be very entertained, much more with Jaden Daniels than we would Drake May. But as I expressed, May is still my preference because of the size, because of the arm strength. Because I think he's going to be ready on day one, more than Jaden Daniels, who I think is going to have a bit of a learning curve, even though he is a Heisman Trophy winner. And you're not going to be losing much selecting Jaden Daniels instead of Drake May. So now we're heading to the second round. Patriots will be picking second in the second round. I say you got to add depth to the tackle position. Either Patrick Paul of Houston or Tyler Guyton of Oklahoma, whoever is available. I think one of those guys will probably be available at the top of the second round. And then, ideally, as I outlined, you have Michael Onwenu, you have Tyron Smith or Trent Brown, and then you have either Patrick Paul or Tyler Guyton. That may give you the ability to kick back Michael Onwenu to right guard and put that new a tackle, Patrick Paul or Tyler Guyton at the right tackle position. And then you got a really great offensive line, right? And, you got perhaps your left tackle of the future. You develop him at right tackle whenever Tyron Smith or Trent Brown moves on because they are up there in age. And you really suddenly go from having one of the worst O-lines in the NFL to one of the best in just a few moves. I think that makes a lot of sense for the Patriots to do. So you take Drake May or Jaden Daniels, whoever is available. My preference is May. And then you take Patrick Paul or Tyler Guyton, whoever's available at the tackle position in round 2. Now in round 3, the guy I'm targeting here, I think he will be available, is Roman Wilson, the wide receiver out of Michigan. Had a very good Senior Bowl. Really looks to be a strong player. I think he's going to add a new dimension to that offense. You add him alongside Mike Evans, Demario Douglas, the slot receiver of the future, Kendrick Bourne. You suddenly have a really good receiving core, and I think Roman Wilson is kind of the missing piece, going to be able to play sort of that Danny Amendola type role. And Demario Douglas will be your Edelman, and then you have your number one guy in Mike Evans or whomever the best receiver is available in free agency. Then you got a really good receiving core, right? So I'd be really excited about that. And then top of the 4th round, I'm not sure he's going to be available. So if you think he's going to be snagged, maybe you trade back into the 3rd round. But a guy I really like who hasn't been talked about too much is Will Shipley, the running back out of Clemson. Some people think he's a day 3 guy. Some people think he's a 3rd round guy, maybe even late 2nd round. I don't think he's going to go that high. But I think you may be able to get him early in the 4th round or trade back into the 3rd round and get him at the end of day 2. Will Shipley basically can do whatever you ask of him. He's a great pass-catching running back. He's going to be able to be in that James White 3rd down role. And then you take a little bit of the pressure off of Ramondre Stevenson. You get some of that depth at the running back position. I would like to see them bring back Ezekiel Elliott, but even if Zeke is back, I still think it's worth drafting a guy like Will Shipley as a 3rd down back, and then you can kind of platoon Ramondre Stevenson, maybe a little bit more playing time than Zeke. But Zeke looks really strong in New England. I'm just not sure he's going to want to come back. That's the thing. But either way, I think it's worth taking Will Shipley if you can get him either late in the 3rd round, trading up, or early in the 4th round. So those are my first 4 picks. Drake May at quarterback, Jaden Daniels if he's not available, then Patrick Paul or Tyler Guyton, whomever the Patriots like best or whoever's available at tackle in the 2nd round. Roman Wilson at wide receiver in the 3rd round. And then either late 3rd, early 4th, you take Will Shipley, give yourself that 3rd down back out of Clemson, and then you've jump-started this offense. And I'm not saying they're going to be in the Super Bowl, right? Like it's a bit of a reach. I don't think you're beating Kansas City or Baltimore, but maybe Drake May or Jaden Daniels develops a little bit more, and suddenly you are in contention again. So that's how I outlined it. Onwenu, Bourne, Henry, Kyle Duggar, Mike Evans, Tyron Smith or Trent Brown, Drake May or Jaden Daniels, Patrick Paul or Tyler Guyton, Roman Wilson, and Will Shipley. Basically, all these guys except for Duggar are offensive players, but the defense is already a top 5. I just think you got to bring back Kyle Duggar to keep that athleticism out there. Let me know what you think. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like this video and subscribe. And let me know in the comments, do you think this is a good plan? Or do you have a better idea on what the Patriots should do? And be sure to subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we'll be back tomorrow with more Pats Cast New England Patriots coverage.